Thank you so much, everyone, for coming to spend your Sunday afternoon with us. My name is Koshari Eagle, and I am an information officer here with the Pacific Northwest Team 2. And we wanted to provide an opportunity for you to get information directly from the incident commanders and the fire managers, as well as some information to help you move forward today. Now, the reason we're doing this is to be of service to you, and we can better do that if we have a sense of what your needs are before we get started. So I just want to just check around the room and find out how many of you actually have property that was burned by the stick pin or Renner or Graves fire. Is there anyone here who has private property that was burned? Okay, so we don't have any of those needs to address. How many people were evacuated at some point in time because of the fires? Okay, just one hand there. And how many of you are interested in learning some things that you can do so that you don't have to worry so much if these fires or any others in the future end up moving? Everyone's interested in learning a little more. Excellent. Well, you came to the right place. For those of you who have been to public meetings here before that have been entirely focused on the fire, this one's going to be a little bit different. We're going to spend the first half of our meeting talking about the current status of the fire and about all the work that's been done, the work that's been done, the progress that's been made, and where we're looking on the fire. And then we may take just a short little break, and then we're going to spend the second half focusing on the resources that are, the information and resources that are available to help you make your homes and your property more fire-wise, giving you the tools and the information so that if this occurs, whether fires move next month, whether there's a new fire start next week, or whether something happens next year, you can have a little more comfort in knowing that you're prepared and a little less fear. So that's what our goal is here today. So I want to start out, you guys have agendas in front of you. We're going to follow that, but I would like to start with a word from our incident commander, Schulte, to introduce the others. Thanks.
Thank you, Kishori. Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi.
As Kishori said, my name is Schulte. I'm the incident commander of Pacific Northwest Team Number 2. I am awfully glad that the firefighters and the weather have got together and made it possible for us to relax a little bit while we're having this meeting about fire. So that's all I'm going to go into. It's just pleasant to be here and not be all wound up and worried about people on the ground and worried about what the fire is going to do and where it's going to go. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Deputy Incident Commander Lonnie Click, and he'll have some information for you.
Thanks, Chris. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for having us. The last time I stood up here, I was actually the operations chief on the team. And now I'm doing an IC role, so it's a great opportunity for me to advance in where the positions of the team. So I'm just gonna cover an overview really quick. And as Chris stated, we've had a great opportunity with some help from Mother Nature, and we've got some considerable mop-up taking place. The fires are looking really, really good with all the areas on all 3 fires and heavy mop-up. Some of them are already in patrol status, where folks are just wandering through there, making sure no new smoke show. And that's really good. We still do have some areas on the fires. The stick pin on the east side, that we're still have a little piece in there at the head of the Deer Creek watershed that has some uncontained line in it. We have folks in there looking at what we can do with it and where we're going to go with it. We're trying not to do a lot of damage in that watershed for the town of Orient. So we're being real careful what we do in there. Also in Denman Creek on the Graves fire, which we took over at the beginning of last week, coming off the steep bank on the north aspect there down in the Denman Creek. We're looking at opportunities on how we can tuck those edges of the fireway along with the west side of the Renner where it comes down into South Boulder. So we have a couple areas that we're still looking at. Last time I stood up here, we talked about indirect firing. We're pretty much done with that. There's a couple areas that If the fuels dry out, we'll be able to do that, but really we're pretty much done with that. One thing that we're working on now is we've been here for 12 days, so we're getting ready to transition out. We're working on that transition. One thing you would like to know is that the team that was here before us, Mike Cirillo and his Type 2 team, they're the ones that are coming in behind us. So it won't be a bunch of new folks. You'll know who they are, and they'll take command of the incident on Tuesday evening at the end of that shift. So I'm going to turn it over now and to Rob Allen, and he's going to talk about the operational piece of what's going on out there on the line very specifically. And again, thanks. It's been a great opportunity working up there in the valley. And good luck.
Thanks, and as Lonnie pointed out, he was the ops chief last time, and I don't know if he's actually getting promoted up or promoted down. I was an ops guy too, and now I spend more time in period meetings, and if I'm not in a meeting, or I'm late for a meeting, so. He covered most of what we were going to talk about, so just real quickly I'll point out some of the areas that we were concerned of that he was talking about. This is that area that we're above the Orient watershed that we're looking at. We went in and started going kind of direct on that, and then we pulled back out because of some concerns we had. It's looking really good in that area. Everything else all the way up and around to about here is all in patrol and mop-up status. They're still wandering through. And for those folks that don't know, when we go through and mop up, before we call a place that we're really sure it's not going to burn anymore, that means the crews have all lined up, shoulder to shoulder or arm's length apart, and they walk through an area and they grid it. And basically they go through and touch everything by hand to make sure that everything's cool in there so that we know that it's out. We'll also use some IR, we'll use some infrared, we'll use some other fancy stuff, but the way we really know for sure is that young guys and gals go out and wander around in the woods and touch everything that's on the ground. They come back really black and dirty, but then we know for sure. One of the last places we had was in this area that we were kind of tying up, and that's looking good now. All around the outside areas where we've got some of that contingency line, we've started on the repair work, and Nikki's going to talk about that in a little bit, how we start pulling the stuff back in that we pushed out and the things that we damaged going into it. There was a little slump over just across the creek, South Boulder Creek down in here, that the folks went in and started putting line around that the other day. That's an area we haven't been into too much because the access was bad. They had to cut their way all the way in with all the trees that have been falling over the roads in the last few windstorms. But they got themselves cut all the way in, started working on that, and that's coming along really well. Let's go to Renner. Renner fire's looking really good too. We've got a little, oops. Okay. There's a little piece up here in the corner that we wanted to burn out to bring the fire line down and tie it into South Boulder Creek. We wanted to get that done. We had a little bit of a window a couple days ago. Actually, it dried out just enough after that first rain that we started getting a few spots. We got a spot across the line. We had to stop everything when we picked up that spot. Picked it up, got it looking good. By the time we were ready to get lined out and start burning again, we got more rain kind of out of that window now, probably till next week. So we'll leave that for the next team to look at. But other than that, all the way down and around and up from Dead Man all the way up to Thompson Ridge is all in patrol and mop-up status. Looking really good there. We're really excited about that. There's a control line that comes down Thompson Ridge and then ties in to Dead Man Creek to protect the structures and folks that were in there. They're starting to work on looking a little bit of rehab of that, but we're not going to do too much of that because the Grange fire is just down here. There's still some potential to come to the east this way, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But the section down in here, they've been down the road, they've kind of hiked off the trail, looked at that stuff in there. We had a couple options of some things that we wanted to do in there. It's looking really quiet, hasn't moved in quite a few days. We don't think we're going to spend the time or the energy to put people in there with the limited resources we have right now. Not a lot of values at risk out in here, but we do have a contingency line that comes down and ties into the road now, and that'll run over and tie into the southern end of the stick pin fire. So we've got to have it boxed off. Still looking at the same part of the up end too. The last time we were here, we talked we might burn that road out, the Boulder Creek Road. Not looking like we're going to need to do that. We found some other lines in there that we can pick things up on. So we'll go back to Graves. Got a lot of work done on Graves from about here all the way down and around and up to the top of Coyote Ridge, all in patrol and mop-up status. They got up and around the spot here. We're still mopping that up, and that's starting to come together really good. That'll be looking contained here in the next few days. And our troublesome spot is trying to get from Dead Man up to the top of Coyote Ridge. A lot of fuel in there, a lot of dead and down, very kind of tricky. It hasn't moved in the last few days. It does have potential to move out this way, so we're trying to work up some stuff to get in there, but we're thinking that we'll leave a few things in place for the other team to look at to try to tie that in, and we think they'll be able to pull that off in a little bit more time. And then if we go back to all three. So there are some areas on all three fires that we're just not going to get to. Some areas along in here, we started working down this road system, and that upper piece is looking really good. We're coming up off the bottom road, and that's looking kind of good. But there's some areas still in the middle here that we're just not going to be able to get to. It's too steep. There's a lot of fuel in there, and there aren't a lot of risks. There's not a lot of stuff out there that we're too worried about burning up. We do have a plan for burning out the road if we needed to. It doesn't look like it's going to happen, given the fact that we're in that time frame where we're in the time of year where our days are starting to get quite a bit shorter. We're all feeling that. That cuts down on our burn window and the amount of time that the area can actually burn and get going. So the burn window's getting shorter, so the days are getting shorter, that burn window's getting shorter. We're getting more and more humidity recovery at night. We're not looking at, although there is a good opportunity, and this kind of leads me to the fact that there are places in here that we haven't done anything. There are islands in the middle of all of these fires that have not burned. If you fly over it, it's a very mosaic pattern. There's little patches that have burned and haven't gone. So as it starts to dry out, they're talking 80s, 90s maybe this weekend. We get a nice Indian summer that we're known to have in these areas. We could end up seeing a lot more smoke coming up and more activity happening on the fire. Most of that will be interior. We think we've got our lines built in far enough that it shouldn't be an issue coming out. But there is potential for this area and this area to make a little bit of movement. The team that's coming in will be watching that as that starts to happen. We have plans in place, a long-term strategy for this fire for the forest to have afterwards that they can take care of. And we'll identify some key areas that look like it might be a real problem. We got some things working this creek here, holding the stuff to line up. That's looking good. Like I said, this piece in here is really steep and hard to get to. Could move around, but we don't think it's going to move very fast. The burn window will be getting shorter. It could push the road, but there'll be a response plan in place for that. So that's what we've got going forward. We'll be transitioning out the next couple of days with the new team. They were the ones that put a good chunk of the lines in here that we've been working right now, so they're really familiar with this area, and it should be a smooth handoff. Lots of good work being done, lots of crews still here. We're still at 9,000 people working, or 900 people working on the fire. 9,000, seems like it. There's people all over that camp. We had 900 people working on the fire still. 2 National Guard crews that just showed up. They're fresh. They're doing a lot of really good work. So we've got a lot of good things going for us, and especially the weather is really helping us out a lot. So thank you.
Thanks for that level of detail, Rob. That's great. Next up, we planned this meeting primarily about the Kettle Complex, but we know that people in the valley here are also very interested in the North Star fire. And the North Star folks are having another public meeting down at 4 o'clock down in Republic, which you can go to if you really like meetings on a Sunday. Or we're going to do a brief update with their public information officer, Mark Van Every, to just give you a little bit of an update of what's going on with North Star and Tunk Block.
All right, thank you. If I can get that pointer wherever it is. Thank you. So just quickly, things just like on this fires that you heard about, we are experiencing some benefit from the weather that we had. It's slowing fire activity for the time being. However, it's also slowing down some of our tactics in terms of fighting the fire, and that is the burnout operations that we've been doing. Because things are wet, until that dries out a little bit, we won't be able to finish off some of the line, particularly for this area down around Highway 21. We need to burn off the road and burn it back up to where the fire's hung up in the rocks. And so it's going to be a few days before we're able to complete that if things dry out. Currently, we're at 208,000 acres on the North Star fire, 162,000 on the Tunk fire, so about 370,000 acres. Making very good progress on the Tunk fire, about 60% contained. If you take a look at the map up here, the black lines that you see coming all the way around the west side, around the south end, and then yesterday we were able to make this section contained and also coming around this corner here a little bit. So a lot of work yet to do in here, but making very good progress. On the North Star, 2 days ago, we got a lot of progress coming all the way around this section here with our burnout operations. We're continuing to reinforce and mop and patrol that to make sure it's secure and hope to make this area contained very soon. We'll then continue to work our way down this way. This area was called contained yesterday, as was this little piece right in here and here. And so we're looking for opportunities where we can get right up close to the fire's edge, build line, reinforce that with mop up, and then be able to call it contained. We also are looking for opportunities when conditions allow to do the burnout operations. We currently have 1,781 firefighters. That's about half to 2/3 of what you would normally have for a fire this size. What that means is we can get a lot of good work done, but we have to prioritize because we don't have all the resources we need to really get after this. So we're focusing on the areas of greatest risk first, trying to get those shored up where we can, and then we'll begin to work on the other areas as we have opportunities and as we have the resources available. Just to give you a little idea on context, normally, if you look at this map, there's divisions that are a group of firefighters, a group of resources that are working on that. Typically on a fire, that might be 1 to 5 miles in a division. All of these divisions are 10 to 12 miles. So a large area, when we make a little piece on the map like this, it doesn't look like much in context because the perimeter around both of these fires totals 380 miles. So a few miles doesn't look like much, but it's a lot of hard work by a lot of people, and the firefighters out there are doing a great job, doing it very safely, and so far have been able to protect all of the structures except for one abandoned cabin down on the south end on the North Star fire, and of course there were some homes lost in a variety of areas early on in the Tongue fire, but since then been able to protect, and we estimate about 6,000 structures that were protected and saved. Certainly that doesn't help the folks that lost them, but a very good job by the firefighters out there. So I'll be around for a little bit during the break on the meeting. If anybody has specific questions I can try to answer. Unfortunately, then I have to run down to Republic to get ready for the next meeting. So if you have questions, please try to catch me during the break over at the map over there on the side wall. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. So that's a brief update on what's going on with the fires. There's a lot of things in the world besides just fire, and so we wanted to have, our next speaker is Terry Baker. He's representing the Colville National Forest to give you an update on what's going on from the forest perspective and some of the things related to the forest that you might care about. Terry?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for sharing some of your Sunday afternoon with us. Just like Mike Cirillo's team, I've made my way back after a few weeks back home. So glad to be back and glad to have a chance to help again. Like I told many of you before I left, that we're going to ask for your understanding and your patience through this whole thing. There was a lot of challenges, one of the main ones being getting resources in. Thankfully, that patience paid off, and we've been able to get resources in and get some weather like Mike Chris mentioned, and make a lot of headway on these fires and be able to protect everything except one structure, I believe. So, back to some of the forest business. Things are moving along. One of the most important things I know is that people are concerned about closure areas. We're working really hard on a regular basis and reassessing those closures and looking at if we can bring those down a little bit and or lift them. And we've lifted a few across the forest. There'll be more to come just as the weather continues. I have been in touch with the county for Ferry County as far as the roads go. The plan is that North Boulder Creek Road will be completely open tomorrow. And a reminder that the side roads off of that going into the forest are still closed. They're still under a closure order. But the thoroughfare to get from this side to the other side will be open officially tomorrow. Outside of that, we're just keeping going, trying to get back to a little bit of regular forest business, but continuing with the repair work that Nikki Swanson will be talking about, and doing our best to take care of things on the other side of the fire, which is getting ready for what may happen this fall and winter and into the spring. So I'll be around for any questions, and we'll do everything we can to help. Thank you.
The lot of you have been to several of these meetings, and so you know that as a team and as a profession in wildland fire, we are very focused on safety. Not just safety of the firefighters, but also safety of the public. So our resource advisor lead, Nikki Swanson, is going to share with you some information about safety when you're entering an area that's burned and some of the other impacts that you may not think about that happens after a fire.
Great, thanks. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to talk first about what a resource advisor is, because that might be a term that you're not very familiar with. And so there's resource advisors that were out with the different divisions, and as they were figuring out how to fight the fire, there were resource advisors around as well. Sometimes moving a dozer line, 10 feet here or there can really positively affect a wildlife habitat area, a cultural resource area, those kinds of things. And so when we can provide for firefighter safety, put the fire out, and preserve natural resources, we try to do all of those three things. Of course, when push comes to shove, it's all about firefighter and public safety and getting the fire out. But again, if we can do all those things, why not? Let's protect all of it. And so after the fire's out, then we go through and we look at the suppression repair. How can we best kind of put things back together again? Some of the activities that you'll see us doing out there when you go back in will be pulling back some of the berms, and when we do the dozer lines, there ends up being berms on both sides. We'll pull some of that back. We'll pull back in tree limbs and branches and things like that. We'll do reseeding to try to decrease erosion. A lot of you rely on water that comes off the National Forest land, either for your operations for agriculture or for drinking. We want to make sure that that stays as clean and clear as possible, both for you and then also fish and other species that rely on cold, clean water. So a lot of our activities are related to that, to just decreasing sedimentation. So just some of the safety considerations as you go back in and start exploring and hunting and all of the things that you guys will be wanting to do this fall and into the winter. The trees fall over. The ones that are black will fall over at some point in time. And it doesn't take a big tree to hurt you. Like branches can hurt you. And so you might be going through and thinking, oh, this is fine. But even a branch falling. So as you're going in, just look around, check for snags, make sure that there aren't trees hung up, things that could fall on you. If it's a windy day, you might not want to be in the black areas. It might not be a very safe place to be. Also, if you're a chainsaw carrying person, you might want to carry a chainsaw. You could end up, in areas that look fine when you go in, the wind picks up, trees fall down, to safely be able to get back out again. Just as far as, floods and things like that, sometimes when we have fires, especially if there are areas where, there's higher severity burns, there's not as much vegetation and things to hold that soil in place. And so sometimes we'll get you can get flash floods, you can get debris torrents, things like that can happen. And so if you get a really heavy rain, just heads up. You could get culverts that get blocked, roads could wash out, those kinds of things. So just a heads up if you get a heavy rain in the area. You can monitor the National Weather Service. NOAA has really good forecasts. Sometimes they'll even be specific by fire if they're expecting any trouble in your area. And so you can do that. The National Weather Service, or NOAA, actually recommends that anyone who lives in a floodplain area or any sort of area, where there could be like a debris torrent or landslide movements or things like that, some of those alluvial fans, they recommend that you do get flood insurance. Most homeowners insurance does not cover the flood. And so if you don't have flood insurance and you live in one of those areas, you might want to consider that. So that's all I have for now. If anyone has any questions about natural resources or safety or fire suppression or any of that kind of stuff, I'll be up front here during the break and then also after the meeting. Thanks.
Just as an add to what Nikki just said, I learned this spring that with getting flood insurance after a fire, if you don't initially have it, apparently it takes 30 days to go into effect. So if you do live in an area downstream of a flood, downstream from the burned areas, they recommend getting flood insurance as quickly as possible because you don't know whether that flood will be next week, in December, or in March maybe. But to get it as quickly as possible so that it can have time to go into effect. Next, just a little brief update from the Red Cross. I have Gail who is going to come up and speak for a moment. Fortunately, all of the evacuation levels in our area now are at a 1 or below, which is really good news. But since there is still fire season coming, I wanted to let them know if conditions change, how they can be of assistance.
Good afternoon, folks. Like like she said, I'm Gail Palmer. I'm a volunteer from the Omaha, Nebraska area. I got to spend the last week in Stevens County at Colville. Very nice town, very nice people. So I was a government liaison, so kind of handling things between the EOC and the Red Cross back and forth. Do want to let you know that we have some little postcards in the back. We want to let you know that we're not, even though the fires are decreasing and getting handled, we're not leaving the area. If anybody needs some client casework done, needs some help, call those numbers that are on the card. We will be available. We'll be around. You'll probably see people driving around in vehicles, so we'll be here. If the fires ramp up again, we will be here to open shelters or do whatever we need to do. And just, you know, we do follow the fire guide, so if it goes to a level 2, we don't want to be in harm's way. We're going to open a shelter somewhere where it's a level 1 or a 0 so that we can keep everybody safe. We don't want anybody in harm's way. But we will be around if you have questions. Don't hesitate to call or to ask. And, you know, as beautiful it is here, I'm looking forward to going back where we have roads that go north and south and east and west. Thank you.
Let's go those ways too.
I do have a couple of changes to the agenda. Dean from the Ferry County Sheriff's Office had something else he had to attend to. He's actually from Spokane Police Department, but just helping out Ferry County. But their big announcement today was that they plan to open Boulder Creek Road at 8 o'clock tomorrow, like Terry mentioned, so he covered for that. And also, John Foster Fanning told me that he may or may not be here. You know, he's been working a lot the last month. And I believe today is his wife's birthday, so he wasn't sure that he would make it. So at this point in the program, we'd like to give you an opportunity to stretch for just a minute if you'd like to while we get set up. The whole entire next about 20 minutes, half an hour is going to be dedicated to things that you can do on your own property and around your home. And resources, if you aren't able to do it by yourself, there's help for that. But we'd like to take just about 3 to 5 minutes to get set up for that and give you a chance to stretch so that you can refocus and learn a lot this next part. Thanks.